Hi, so today we are at the Depot Climbing Centre in Sheffield, and we're here in this massive, amazing climbing centre where we've got loads and loads of bouldering, but in particular the Y Boys Crack School. And we're here with a number of the Lattice coaches, and I'm going to be teaching them how to really refine and improve on their crack skills. And what you'll find is that a lot of our clients actually are very interested in crack climbing and trad climbing, and so today's session we're going to be going through and improving on a number of those skills. And our coaches have all got some crack skills, but I think that ability to be able to improve and get the very best parts out of that technique, be able to convey that back to someone else that you're teaching and helping their training, is a really useful tool. So we're going to get those coaches upskilled, and we're going to see how they get on today, and hopefully you can kind of follow along with the process and get a load out of it for yourself.
So we're here with the coaches today, with the Lattice crew, and we're going to do some crack climbing. So Tom's going to be teaching us. Loads of the guys know how to crack climb anyway, but we want to find out if Tom can actually teach them anything new, whether he is a good coach. We all think he is, but we've not seen it in person yet. And see if we can have some fun.
So I actually have some experience with crack climbing, and that mainly comes from the fact that I've been drawn to granite as a rock type and have climbed quite a few big walls, especially in Yosemite. I've climbed El Cap, and obviously you encounter a lot of cracks on those climbs, but I think the problem is in that environment, it's very easy to sort of strength your way through it, or just try really hard because you're so motivated to do the climb. So it'll be really interesting for me to come to this indoor environment, like with such specific cracks, like really pure as well, like no friction or footholds on the rock, and learn a bit more about like a more efficient jamming technique, rather than that sort of like dig deep and try hard attitude that you can have when you just go rock climbing.
So in terms of my trad climbing experience, it's actually fairly minimal. Ironically, I started out trad climbing, so encountered a few cracks in the Peak District. Millstone, pretty famous crag, got up to about HVS on cracks around there, but then for some reason sort of migrated away from that more towards sport climbing and bouldering. You don't get so many cracks in those two disciplines, so haven't done that much. I'm excited to get to learn more about it today. We have quite a few clients all around the world that are totally psyched on learning how to crack climb, or even they're quite pro at it already and want to go out and set some big lines that they're really psyched for. So for me as a coach, it's really important to make sure that we get their training plan right in terms of understanding the movement on the cracks, what kind of physiology, like what kind of key muscles we're using within the crack climbing, and how we can train it. We don't all have cracks available to us in our home setup or our local wall, so it's doing the best we can with the facilities we've got to make sure that we can target the client's training so that they're ready to go when they go out on their trip. So who do I think will be the best Lattice coach at crack climbing today after teaching? Well, obviously we have to discount those that have got experience at it already, so I'm only going to include those who have less experience thus far. I'm going to say Cam. I think he's got some steely determination, and I think he'll learn quick.
With the perfect hand jam, I want to give you two key things to really take away in terms of the technique and what I think are the most important things in terms of improving in that style of climbing. And what you would have seen from today is that when we place our hands in the crack, it's really important what we actually do with our thumbs and our fingers inside of the crack. So the key thing in terms of the action of the hand inside the crack is that we're bringing our thumb across towards our little finger so that it's really expanding this middle part of our hands. This is like the action of mechanical advantage that we get inside the crack. So that's really expanding the width of our hands in the crack. And then secondly is that when we're bringing our fingers across and we're using this kind of paddle hand or finger bar in the crack, is that we keep our fingers straight within the crack, because then we get much better opposition from the knuckles on one side and the tips on the other, and that force is transferred really evenly, rather than what you will have seen a lot of people try and do, is where they try and crimp inside the crack and they bring their fingers across. Much better to do a flat hand barring, finger barring position inside the crack. So that's really important on that hand jamming technique for kind of perfect width size, where you can get all the way up to your wrist nice and deep.
Yeah, so key things for hand jamming for me today was one, sort of the timing and coordination, and I think this comes down to strength as well. But unless your bottom hand is bomber, you're going to be throwing your top hand in, and it's all about slow placement of jamming. At least for me, I can't just get it in straight away. So it requires this hand to be really good, but also the ability to lock this down and keep it stuck in. And the other thing which kind of joins onto this is, I think a lot of what I do as a climber and what these guys are doing is we tend to try and twist, and with this it's very straight on, so you can actually engage this part of your body and keep that locked down. Tend to be twisting, and for that it's actually compromising the position of this hand, so you end up throwing this in and getting a really crap jam and shuffling and making it look terrible. But when you see like Tom crack climbing, he just places this in and really gently, slowly places this in. And I think that's the key part of it, is how you can keep this locked down to place this nice and slowly and actually get a good jam in, rather than flailing around like us and throwing your hands at the cracks.
So the key thing that I picked up for the hand jamming is the paddling of the fingers. So once the thumb, you've created volume across the hand, is pushing the fingers into the opposite wall rather than trying to crimp on the opposite wall. So trying to get that paddling of the fingers to get that final bit of volume, get that last bit of torque in there.
Right, if we move on to the fist jamming technique and talk about two main things that I would like you to take away for your fist jamming technique, and how that might help you improve when you're trying these things, whether it's on indoor wide boys volumes or on outdoor fist cracks. I think number one is to understand that the fist, when you form that, so that fist position doesn't have very much expansion, so we're limited by the distance from our little finger all the way through to our index finger, so that when we close our fist inside of the crack, we're not going to really have that big expansion effect that we get from our hand jamming. So not to expect a fist jam to feel absolutely amazing. Loads of people do this technique and think, oh, I just don't know, it feels a bit iffy, it doesn't feel really comfortable. But don't worry about that, it won't always feel perfect, and to just learn how to be a little bit uncomfortable in those fist jams and keep moving up the crack. So that's number one, I think is really important. And then secondly is to know that if you do a fist jam and you think, this just isn't working for me, I need to improve or increase the width size of my fist, you can use your thumb. This is kind of your helper and your extra little secret weapon. And the way we're going to use that for a fist jam is we're going to bring our thumb out onto the outside of our fist. So rather than here, we're going to bring our thumb round to the side, and we can then really increase the width across this part of our hands, so that we're making a much wider fist. And of course we can do a flat thumb where it's a little bit narrower, or we can do a much wider thumb where we create a 90-degree angle and we get a really wide fist. So that's kind of your second key trick to use with the fist jamming.
So we've just finished the fisting aspect of today's group session. I found it really quite hard actually. I've always given Tom loads of crap for being weak as a climber, but you can see how good he is at this style of climbing and how well he is at moving in the right way, and how strong he is in certain positions on the wall. For me, the main thing is my entire body is so tense trying to stay on, and you'll see it with a lot of the others that are less experienced, that we're just trying as hard as possible on the entire body, whilst when you watch the better climbers fish jamming, above the elbows tense and the rest of the body looks pretty relaxed. So for me, if I start trad climbing harder routes using fish jams, I really need to work on that, because at the moment I'm going to blow up about 2-3 meters off the ground and I won't get much further than that.
So the main thing I've learned to improve at fish jamming is to actually practice it. I think it's feels like a really unnatural position, and when you encounter it outside it can be quite tempting to just sort of get around it any way possible. But really thinking about how to position your body and make your hand fit the crack with your thumb makes it marginally easier. Not that much more easy though.
Thin hands is one of those techniques which people really struggle with, and it's hard. You can't get your hands into the crack properly and it feels really marginal. So the two things that I often try and teach people is that one, this is one element of your climbing. So normal climbing, where you climb slopers and crimps, where you can actually use a bit of the strength that you have in your forearm. And the way in which I describe that is that when you use that paddle hand or that finger bar inside the crack, you can really crank down and use that strength to be able to close down in the crack when you're jamming. So on this particular type or style of crack climbing, you can actually use some proper strength in it and really, really squeeze. So don't be averse to, pushing hard and actually using the strength that you've built up through training. The second is that when we do this thin hand jamming technique, is if we swap the top hand, so that leading hand when we're climbing, so that the thumb goes into the crack first, so we slide that thumb into the crack first, we get that active thumbing, jamming technique that we get from our thumb, and that becomes most important because it's going into the crack first. It's not going into the crack second. So if we go into a crack this way round, it's going in second, but we flip it and we put the thumb in first, we're still getting plenty of help from that thumb in the thin hands. So those are the two things that I think most climbers want to take away and use and practice on thin hands technique.
Go on, Dave. Go on, Dave.
We've finished today's session now, and we've had a couple of hours with all of the coaches doing some teaching and learning how to climb on cracks a little bit better, and then also looking at some of the training implications for how we might work with people that are interested in crack climbing and some of the training we might do associated with that. What I thought would be cool to do at the end is to have a little bit of a chat with Dave and Ella, and they've been through this workshop session with me for the last couple of hours, and get their ideas of what they've learned and their takeaways, and perhaps a few messages about what we take as coaches and how we work with our own clients. So to start, I'm going to ask Ella, can you tell me a little bit about what you feel is something that before you didn't quite understand about crack climbing, but now you might do a little different with some of your clients?
Yeah, perfect. So something that I've come to realise is just how physical training on an actual crack is, and how you could leave a session quite demolished and exhausted. So that will influence the training plans that we create for our clients, because we probably want to make sure that they schedule those crack specific sessions separately to perhaps other strength and power based sessions, so that you have that nice separation and that time to recover, particularly if we're looking at anaerobic capacity. intensity sessions. We'll be working quite hard, we'll be quite in lockdown positions, and I appreciate that'll be very hard to combine with any other kind of strength and power session, because that will take your top end off, which you probably actually want to get the most out of your anaerobic capacity.
Yeah, that's a really good point actually. And would you say, Dave, that with the energy system stuff and metabolically, that when it comes down to it, crack climbing can still take that same intensity and volume, metabolic, energy system approach?
Oh, without doubt, yeah. It's a high intensity, repetitive skill and demand that you're placing on the body that you need to be able to replicate that's specific to the activity, and there is some translation between what you can do in other parts, but there's no replacement for the specificity that you get from climbing on a replica and crack system like we've got here.
Yeah, and what I would say, it's so different to standard climbing that you get in a climbing wall. And I think the message has come through loud and clear that if you're serious and like to try crack climbing, do your utmost to either get one at your local wall or build one at home if you can do that. I think it's going to make such a difference.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's to a lot of people that if they really do want to genuinely have a go at their crack climbing, is it often only takes a 6-foot section of wooden planking at home, and you can knock this kind of thing up for 20 or 30 pounds. But just that basic tool in your living room or in your cellar or garage at home is such a useful thing to do because it's so specific, and even very basic training exercises have a really good transfer to your climbing and your projects that you want to try. Okay, second question, I'm going to ask this one to Dave.
Yep.
Is we tried 3 different techniques out today.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any particular one that you walked away from and thought, actually that's a little bit more interesting or different to how I perceived it at the start of today?
I think the fists were the most intuitive to start off with, because for me the fist on the wide boys volumes is about right for me, so that felt quite intuitive. The narrow thin hands and the paddling, that was unusual, and it was a completely different hand position and body position to anything that I've experienced elsewhere, bouldering or route climbing. So that's can I emphasise the specificity and the difficulty of that sort of thing? And even though I've been climbing for more than 20 years, I probably have put my hand in that position probably 2 or 3 times in that whole time, and that would take a lot of work to feel strong and confident in that hand position. So that's something, a bit of an eye-opener for me.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because I feel exactly the polar opposite. So I felt much more comfortable in the sort of thin jamming, and where you were paddling and essentially rolling around on your pec a lot more, because I'm much more of a pecky dominant climber because I like pockets and I like rotation. So that came more intuitively to me, as opposed to the fizz jam where I couldn't quite get it to fit. So it just demonstrates how the width of the crack makes a big difference to your session, whether you can just do it or not sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that you'll always find with this type of style of climbing, is that there's some very unique elements to it, and as much that all of us find that when we first try to do it, it's really hard work. If you persist with it and you put the time into it, it really rewards very much for that, because it's a very technique dominant climbing, and whilst you can do lots of training to get that top end and really refine, there's loads and loads of technique to this. So putting time in really rewards, and get 100 meters of crack climbing, get 1,000 meters of crack climbing. Do more, and the more you do, the better you'll get with it. So to round up, let's go for one short tip that I would give to, so I'll give one, you guys give one, that I would give to anyone out there in terms of your crack climbing, and I'll make it easy, and I'll start with my one. And my number 1 tip would be spend more time doing crack climbing and get the mileage in over worrying about it feeling hard initially. So put the mileage in, and that's your first thing that you want to focus on.
Yep, so mine is get some gloves or get a tape glove sorted. Early on, that was going to be on, wasn't it? Sorry. So I found very quickly that I was getting sore, even sometimes with gloves on. So you don't want to wreck your skin, because that means future week's training is compromised, because you're not going to heal that quick. So if you want to put a lot of mileage in, like Tom said, it's definitely worthwhile. Protect your hands. And I'd possibly say, Tom, you may disagree with me, if you feel as though you're doing a particular move or sequence and it feels as though you're going to really, really make your skin sore, perhaps just cut that short and stop, and then just work out if there's something differently you can do to make it less sore. Because once you've broken the skin, it's so sore, isn't it? Yeah, and you don't want to train on really sore skin.
Yeah, don't bother pushing on through ripped flappers or bleeding hands. You just won't learn very much. Just stop the session short and take some rest and recover the skin.
Oh, mine would probably be, other than definitely taping up, enthusiasm cannot compensate for loss of skin. Mine would be that the hand positions are quite specific, and there's quite a lot of technique to arranging your fingers and being able to generate force across the hand, width and depth. Creating that is quite specific, and I hadn't come across that before. I'd always just tried to shove my hand in, twist a little bit, and just hope for the best, and couldn't even get off the floor. So going from that to being able to get to the top on all but the thin fingers for me is shown that there is actually a lot to it. So it explains why I've not managed to get anywhere. So
But you're getting somewhere now.
exactly, yeah.
That's cool. Well, thanks very much, guys, and thanks to everyone out there for watching. Don't forget that if you like these videos and you want to learn more, just click to like and obviously subscribe to the channel, and then you can have the updates on the videos. And otherwise, thanks from us, thanks for watching, and we'll catch up with you soon, I'm sure.
Cheers.
Cheers.